Which one of you chose the decision was for the movie? Did you collectively come to the decision to do Smokey?
I feel like this was my decision, but I don't remember making it because I
definitely was
going
to say, I think Brandon kind of came up with this from my memory.
Yeah, I think it was on the on our Colorado trip. I think we had discussed recording with you, and then I don't know whose decision it was, but I think I might have suggested Smokey and the Bandit, and then Brandon would have enthusiastically been like, "I fucking love that movie." So,
well, this, as I have told the story on our show, this is a formative movie for me. Like, this movie bizarrely changed my life in that I'm mentally unstable and made decisions because I watched this movie too many times.
Been there, buddy.
I before streaming was a thing, but you could get the cable services that would you could direct, not direct TV, but you could basically stream movies, but it was through cable. Yeah. I watched this movie 5 times one weekend. I think I was hurt or something and just laid up, and that was how I decided to become a truck driver. A decision that led me to actually going to trade school and getting my CDL and becoming a truck driver before realizing I'm also too mentally unstable to be a truck driver.
Could be worse things you could have chosen.
Oh, yeah. No regrets. I still have my CDL.
Well, there you go.
You could have become a cop or something.
Yeah.
Even at my least politically developed, that was never a fucking option.
Yeah, same here.
Brandon T. Justice.
I'll fuck right off with that shit.
Yeah, I think I had only ever seen this movie on TV, in sections, a few minutes at a time. And, I had a vague idea about, what it was about. But this is my first time seeing it all the way through. And it was a lot of fun, for sure.
I haven't watched it in so long. I truly did forget how, without using a hard R, Buford T. Justice is so explicitly racist.
Yeah, the only thing I'd ever seen, I think, was the bridge jumping bit. I guess just because it was a famous scene, and this is the first time I watched it full through, and then I watched it a second time, and it's a lot of fun. I was not, I'm not going to say a surprise that I liked it, but I was surprised how much I liked it.
Oh, it's so fun. And I really understand why Burt Reynolds was so much the charmer. He was such a cultural icon back then. And now it's almost like a joke, but looking back and watching some of his old movies, I totally get it.
Yeah, the story that I heard, or that the behind the scenes, apparently he got the script and said it was the worst script he'd ever seen. And it's well, but you know what? I'll do it anyway because I he was friends with the director, and he's well, you know what? Fuck it, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think he said he liked the story, but the dialogue was garbage. Right. And I think but then apparently they improvised a whole lot of the dialogue on set.
Yeah, it said that 80% of the dialogue from the sheriff was improvised, and then at least half of the rest of the whole. Sally Field didn't even know how to do improv, kind of off the cuff, and Burt Reynolds I'm sure you'll be fine. And then I'm sure it was fine.
Knowing how much of this was improvised makes a lot of things make. I don't know a lot about the background of this movie, to be clear. And also for anyone who there's no reason I would have ever talked about this. I fucking love Jerry Reed. There was a period of time where I sought out any movie that he was in. He is an amazing guitar player. I know I have Jerry Reed records. He has been one of my favorite country musicians for as long as I can remember. That dude fucking rules.
Yeah, and he wrote the theme song in one night.
Which is crazy to me.
I'm unsurprised.
That blows my mind. That is such an iconic song and just so good.
Yeah, they just gave him, basically, he read the script and he went, into his wherever it was, and he wrote the song, and he goes to Hal Needham, the director, and said, what do you think of it? And he's if you change one word, I'll fucking choke you out.
Real quick, should we do any sort of introductions or anything? We really just went right into it.
We can use that as the cold open, and I can introduce you. Sometimes I just forget because we were just chatting about it, but yeah, I can. But thank you, Brandon, for being the voice of my voice of reason.
I honestly thought that we had agreed that we were doing Fast and Furious. So when somebody was hey, are we still good to do Smokey and the Bandit with Evan? I'm oh my fucking God, really? Hell yes.
Sit back in your seats, get something to eat, and watch this movie. Don't let the kiddies see it, because, well, we'll let you hear the beginning first. Thank you.
This week on Left the Projector, I have the four hosts of Cars and Comrades, and we're going to be talking about the 1977 film Smokey and the Bandit, which stars, of course, Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, Jerry Reed, and Jackie Gleason. And thank you all for being here, Zach, Connor, Brandon, and Brian.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
Of course.
We've been talking about doing a big collab between both shows for a while, so I'm happy this is finally happening.
Yeah, I'm glad that you chose this movie. And as you probably already heard, this was some of our first times watching this, and I was kind of blown away how good it was and how funny it is, and it's just a solid all-around movie. But maybe before we talk about it, you do want to tell us about the Cars and Comrades. So I guess it's a perfect melding about a movie about driving cars, and we were all comrades. So we've done our.
Also, it's not like as blatant, but this movie is very much fuck the police.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was blatant. I thought it was the whole point of the movie, actually.
Okay,
this
fair.
is the most ACAB movie ever.
No, because at the end, he does that like begrudging respect, like, oh, I can't lie to you, Sheriff, you're too good of a man.
He was fucking with him.
Yeah,
in my
it's
opinion.
totally
He was just being like,
Well, no, because he told him who he really was. If he was like just messing with him, he wouldn't have been like, oh, by the way, I'm standing
I feel
behind
like
you.
Yeah,
I mean,
Actually, no, now that I say that out loud, I 100% understand how that's fucking with
that's
him.
his
Okay,
final
fair.
fuck you to the guy. He's like, hey, you're not gonna get me. Like, look, I'm right here. You're not gonna get me.
60% of your car is left. Good luck catching me.
this is like when hillbillies or when like the Southerners actually hated cops, right? This is a throwback from that era.
Yeah,
in the ending credits, it says like this film was made with the cooperation of the like Georgia State Highway Patrol or something like that. And I don't think that would happen today. Like if they were making this movie, like I don't know if cops had more of a sense of humor in 1977, or if
They did not.
okay, good to know, or if they just didn't like share the entire script with them or something. I don't know if this would get made.
I mean,
today.
they were flipping cop cars.
To
They
get
had
too
to know.
dark right away, but my background, I've discussed this on air. I'm from Georgia, and in the 70s, a Georgia sheriff's deputy did murder my uncle.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the police not chill in the 70s.
Yeah, I think
Went dark right away.
I think they've always been bastards. It's not like a new development that cops are shit. I mean, I think we all know at this point that their origins are in slave catching. So, not chill people ever, really.
Yeah.
I do think that there's been a systemic shift towards a lack of accountability to individuals and like cementing like all these bad practices and policies. Because like my uncle was murdered. He was literally, like, from what I am told, put down on his knees on the side of the highway and executed. And the sheriff's deputy did go to prison for that because everyone was like, oh, that's murder. As to where now there's a reasonable chance that he would have, gotten like administrative leave or something.
Got a talk show.
Yeah, he would have become a right-wing icon, like a Kyle Rittenhouse of cops.
Be Tim Pool's guest host or something.
Oh, God. Ugh.
But yeah, so as I mentioned, you all do have a podcast, Cars and Comrades. Do you want to? I guess the name is quite maybe descriptive enough, but do you want to tell people who may not know you? I guess Brandon, you've been on the show before, so people may have some inkling. But
Yeah, but I'm not very articulate. I repeat, I am from Georgia.
That's what do you call it? Internalized Orientalism or something like that.
Yeah, no, I'm being from Georgia is not why I'm inarticulate. It's because I'm so drunk, which probably has something to do with being from Georgia. I don't know. No, okay. Since I keep rambling, we're a podcast where we are all leftists and talk about cars and car culture from a leftist perspective, and generally try to, as much as you can, as a group of like white dudes, we try to create some element of inclusion in car culture where, there does tend to be a certain amount of right-wing shittiness.
Yeah.
So we would like to make the hobby for everyone. Also, we've shifted hard into an anti-car position. That's been an interesting turn.
Yeah, it's the more I get involved with cars as a hobby, the more it loses its shine, and it's just I wish I could just take public transit to work, and not have to have a car, honestly, or at least have cars as a hobby and not as a necessity,
Yeah, exactly. We're very pro cars as a hobby, not as the main form of transportation for all people in the entire world.
So trains and comrades.
Yeah.
Almost.
I mean, we've done a few episodes about trains and public transit in general. So
Like, I'm down to 8 cars now. How can you expect to like extend that to the population?
Well, I guess speaking of cars, I'm curious what you would say about not necessarily the truck in this movie, but the iconic car that's used in Smokey and the Bandit, which I heard that they received 4 of them to use, and then at the end of there's only 4 Pontiacs, and only one of them could run at the end of it. And then what's the one the sheriff drives? I'm blanking now on the car he had.
it was a Tempest.
I think that was also a Pontiac.
It was a Pontiac. I don't know which model. Maybe like a Tempest or something.
Yeah.
I tried to look into it because I was curious about like so a sticking point for this movie. I've gotten much more knowledgeable on cars since the last time I actually rewatched this. So I was like getting really hung up on the fact that like his Trans Am looks cool and fast, but police, like the handful of police cars that I'm familiar with from the era, they tended to be exempt from a lot of the like fuel economy restrictions. 70s police cars could move, and that Trans Am was a 400 cubic inch engine producing almost 200.
Literally,
I was going to make a note
in my
about
notes
that
as well. Yep.
Same. Great minds think alike. We were all like, God damn, this thing's like got the power of a fucking FRS. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I went ahead and looked it up because I could see on the Ram Air intake, it says 6.6 liter on there.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and looked up what 6.6 liters in cubic inches is. And yeah, that's just over 400 cubic inches. And the post I read said that it made about 180 horsepower, which is less than half of its cubic inches.
They made a high output version that was, I think, closer to 200.
Yep.
So I'm assuming this is good if you want a fast car. From a person who knows nothing about cars.
This is, I think, the beginning of what they called the malaise era, where you had all the emissions laws coming into effect that sort of choked.
I would say this is a few years into that.
Yeah, it is.
So you had all these emissions controls that really choked the power of all these engines, but they hadn't developed like, fuel injection or turbocharging or any of the stuff that gave you actually decent power, like starting in the 80s. So it was a grim time.
All of that was a consequence of the emission standard. So like it created this period where like the cars got real slow, real fast, and then eventually car makers started getting clever with turbos and fuel injection, and so the technology was a necessity because of the emissions controls. So that's why we have the cars that we have today making crazy horsepower and all that. It comes from this, but at that time, yeah, these cars were slow. They were slow as shit. The Trans Am in this movie looks very cool, but I was like, man, I'm almost surprised he could spin the tires like that. I was like, that thing would...
Yeah, live rear axles and no weight
whole time,
in the rear end
could
really helped that out a lot.
Yeah.
They probably put a little bleach on the wheels there.
I am very familiar with this because my Cutlass has the 403 Olds, so only 3 cubic inches bigger, roughly the same horsepower, a bit more torque. But yeah, I can spin my tires all day long.
I mean, I did.
Yeah, I guess
I can't go very fast, but I can break the tires.
The Trans Am did have 320 foot-pounds of torque, which is pretty good, but not for a...
Yeah, it was torquey.
The other one was a Pontiac Le Mans.
Yeah.
That was the ones the other one.
So, I looked up what... I couldn't find much about Pontiac police cars because I know that Dodge were more common and you would see like some Chevy. So there were a lot of the cop cars in this were Pontiacs, and I couldn't find any broad information about like Pontiac police cars and what kind of like performance packages they had. But by this era, they were very concretely of the opinion that they needed a lot of power because what if they had to catch the bad guys? We have to put everyone in traffic's life at risk because that guy was speeding.
They literally used this movie as like their evidence.
Yeah. I wonder if that has to do with like some sort of sponsorship deal that they got with Pontiac. Like, I mean, obviously the hero car is a Pontiac, and
it has to
then
be.
all of the cop cars are Pontiacs in the movie. I'm assuming Pontiac had something to do with the movie and funding the cars.
I wondered about
Well,
that
it's like,
too.
Same with Coors beer.
Coors is
Coors beer.
heavily-
I was noticing.
No. I know the backstory for that, and you guys be glad that you're on here because, like, my dad was a fucking redneck old like truck driver, and I actually understand the cultural reference that this is that's lost to the ages.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Let's hear it.
It's not as dramatic as I just made it sound, but in the 70s, Coors was actually considered good beer. Not every city had 18 breweries where you could get like an IPA that tasted like dog piss. There was a handful of breweries, and yeah, Coors was considered actually good beer, but you, true to form, could not get it outside of like Colorado and certain other states. So it was a real thing that truck drivers would like bring cases of Coors like home with them when they were traveling. I will say, like, I don't know this like hard and fast. This is what my dad told me because I remember one of the first times I watched it with him, I was like, why didn't they not just go to the store and buy a bunch of cases of Coors beer? And he was like, oh, because like back then you couldn't get it. It was really good, but like nobody had it. You had to like know somebody who could bring it to you. So this was not sponsorship from Coors. This was like Coors was a bit of a cultural phenomenon in this way. Like you couldn't get it, but
it's
everybody
like
wanted
In-N-Out Burger or something.
Good comparison.
And so the idea that they actually came up with for the director Needham, apparently on the set for the movie Gator, which I guess was Burt Reynolds' movie before this one, someone had
also with Jerry Reed.
Yes.
Also fucking.
Well, that's why
phenomenal.
Jerry Reed ends up in this one. So apparently, someone had brought some Coors to like the director or something, and they kept putting. I think actually Burt Reynolds directed Gator, so they were putting it into his refrigerator to give to him because it wasn't available where they were filming it in Georgia. And the cleaning person kept stealing the beer from the refrigerator.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
And so they're like, you got to stop doing that. And then it gave them like the idea of like, oh, what if we had a movie about someone who like needs to bring a bunch of Coors because they just want to drink Coors beer. And it only was available in 11 states in 1975 or whatever, 76. So you couldn't get it get any places.
Yeah, it's or I don't know if it still is, but back then it was unpasteurized and had no preservatives. So they would only ship it in refrigerated cars, I think. I'm not sure how it works today, if they've changed the recipe or what. I'm sure they'd tell you no, but I might have mentioned this when we were planning this, but I used to live in Golden, Colorado, near the brewery where they make all the Coors. And it's an interesting tour if you're ever in there. I think it's like a self-guided like audio tour now, but it used to be like they'd have someone show you around. And you get some free samples at the end. But I don't buy Coors anymore. I wouldn't pay them money after what I've learned about the people that own the company.
Wow, it's crazy.
Yeah. If you want to know more about that, there's a really good episode of The Dollop about it. A bunch of fascists, basically. I think two of the Coors family were founding members of the John Birch Society and the Heritage Society or Heritage Foundation.
Nice.
I mean,
super cool.
Yeah.
They used to in like the 1960s and 50s, they would actually give new employees a lie detector test to make sure they weren't communists, gay, or like did drugs.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like the whole story. I haven't listened to that podcast episode, but I've read a couple articles and it's insane.
They also had just like
that's funny to me as someone who in 2024 has had to pass a drug test for their job and is also not allowed to be in the union if I'm in a communist party.
Wait, really?
Sort of.
That's funny.
There's a clause in our union contract that says we're not allowed to be a member of any like revolutionary or like it's a holdover from decades ago, but like it's suppose somebody else from another leftist I know that is in another United Steelworkers branch told me that technically I can't join PSL. Good luck.
Yeah.
Before we get too far away from it, I just wanted to create a frame of reference for any non-car people who might have no idea what it means to have 200 horsepower out of a 400 cubic inch engine. The new GR Corolla is a 1.6 liter 3-cylinder turbo and makes 300 horsepower.
Yeah.
So less than half of the cylinders and 100 more horsepower out of a car or an engine that's
like a third the displacement.
A third the displacement, or less, really, because 6.6 liters. I mean,
less than a third.
That's a quarter or less. And
oh yeah, Jesus, I did my math there.
And
Yeah, technology's gotten a lot better. And that era, people there's a certain nostalgia aspect where people remember their 70s cars. You talk to your dad or grandpa, oh, I had this 70s this and that, and you're like, yo, that thing was slower than a fucking 90s Camry, and it's not even close. Like, it's like, nah, those cars were fucking slow, man. They remember them as cool, but like they were not fast.
The other weird point of reference though is that the Pontiac 400 was pretty prolific. That was Pontiac's performance motor, shy of the 455. A 400 in like 1970 was probably making 350 horsepower. Yeah. That's how badly it was gutted. It was a little bit more than half the horsepower 5 years later because they were actually like being controlled a bit.
And I'll say also my 2017 electric car has more power and accelerates quicker than the Pontiac. But I wrote down in my notes, say what you will about Burt Reynolds and Sally Field, but I think the Pontiac is the sexiest character in this movie. I mean, even if it is kind of slow, it is a really nice looking car. Like, I like the gold accents and the wheels, like the sort of, I don't know what you call that, like diamond honeycomb pattern. Yeah.
Those are sick wheels. This is a really cool car. If I have one objection, and I had to dig in a little bit to find this, so I don't know if it's 100% accurate. Supposedly, they wanted the brand new Pontiac, like 1977 would have been like the newest thing, but it wasn't even fully like unleashed, like released for production yet. So what they did was they took 4 1976s and put the 77 grill and headlight assemblies in.
That's true. It's true.
76 front end looks so much fucking better. Yeah. They downgraded the fucking look of the car, in my opinion. I prefer round to square headlights, but I'm not super intense about that. But the fact that they did go through that effort to supposedly,
I heard that too, and I find that very believable.
I think this is
at that time, like, that's definitely a thing.
I think this is another point in the column of Pontiac sponsoring this film, in that, they wanted their newest vehicle to be on display in the movie, and it didn't matter that it was a little bit prohibitive and, like you said, made it look worse. They just wanted the newest shit to be on screen,
which, by the way, it did work. It was very successful. The Trans Am started to like outsell the Camaro, which is its counterpart car, because they're very, very similar cars.
They're both the same body style. They just have like kind of different grills, basically.
Yeah. So I think that I read that the sales nearly doubled of the Trans Am.
700%
so, like,
increase.
Oh, damn.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. I read nearly doubled in an article. Apparently that's an understatement.
Yeah, and apparently the Pontiac president was going to give Burt Reynolds basically like a Pontiac car for life, and then he left the company and they wouldn't give it to him, and so he had to buy it himself.
It's awesome. I didn't know that part. I did hear that the offer was they were going to give him a new Trans Am every year that there was a Trans Am because of how we boost their sales. To renege on that is hysterical. That's fucking awesome.
Okay, like Burt Reynolds had a lot of cultural weight in like when this came out. So like, they really stiffed him, because like what the cost of like 30 cars over the course of like 30 years or something. He earned every fucking penny of that.
Oh yeah.
That's the amount of extra cars they sold in the first month or the first week this movie came out.
And I know for a fact that even to this day, a 1977 Pontiac Trans Am Firebird with the snowflake wheels and the bird on the hood is like an unreachable amount of money to this day, like 100,000 plus.
I feel like I see them, but it's hard to tell when something's a clone or somebody just drew the graphic. Yeah,
people put the graphics on there, which is cool and fine and whatever. I mean, they all
I don't
had
give a shit if something's original.
I don't.
So this is just, you're mentioning like how big of a star was. Burt Reynolds got paid. The budget for this movie was 4.3 million, and he got paid 1 million. Wow. So it was a quarter of the budget was Burt Reynolds.
God damn.
And then Sally Field didn't get paid very much. It was like very early in her career. Actually, it was Burt Reynolds' idea to have her in the movie. And then, of course, he wanted to have Jerry Reed in the movie. And then they also reached out to Jackie Gleason, and he's like, he read the script. He's like, sure, I'll do this. It's stupid, but fine, whatever. Everyone just was like, I'll do it. And then he just improvised everything. But yeah, it's kind of amazing it got made in some sense, but here we are.
I mean, from what I'm hearing, it kind of sounds like if Gator had not been what it was, this movie would not have been made.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Dude, fuck. God, I fucking love that movie so much. I want to comment. Like, I had never thought of it. Again, I watched this movie almost for the first time this week because I got to watch it through the leftist lens, and that was the first time I realized that Jackie Gleason's first act on screen in this movie is to start physically, like, violently attacking people.
Yeah, and
he catches like those dudes stealing parts off the car, and he just immediately starts wailing on them.
Well, and I found it, interesting. I actually did make a note of it. The first scene in which we see Sheriff Buford T. Justice, the first scene he appears in, they play like this silly, over-the-top bad guy music to like let you know this is the antagonist, and he gets out of his car and he's acting like a cop on a power trip. And it was just like right from the beginning, they're like, this is the bad guy, and he's an idiot. And so then, and then the first thing he does is assault someone. And then he like tells them all like, okay, well, I gotta go leave. But you put your hands on this car and don't you fucking leave. You can't go to the bathroom. You can't do it just till another cop comes, and then just leaves them. It's like,
yeah, I made a note of it in my notes, but the way that cops are portrayed in this movie is fucking awesome. They are all so incompetent and just incapable of doing anything right. I love it. I love every second of the police on screen in this movie. It's so fucking beautiful.
But okay, so also in the context of the movie, the Bandit is a cultural phenomenon somehow.
Right. Yeah, they don't really
that part
go
of
over
the
that. They
movie
just kind of
is-
expect you to understand that the Bandit is this character that you're supposed to like know already, I guess. It felt like there was a prequel that I missed.
No, I got the impression that like they're trying to establish that he is such like a folk hero that just every mom and pop on the side of the road knows who the Bandit is in this world, like in the world of
yeah.
But like what I appreciate so much is that okay, well, you accept that. Take the Bandit is a folk hero in the context of this movie. Every human being alive in this movie is doing their best to mislead the police, lie to them, just block them at dude when the two dudes take the funeral procession through,
that's one of the best scenes
just to keep the cops from catching the Bandit because they're like, no man, fuck the police, Bandit, you got this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like so this might be a good time to do a quick like bare bones like of the plot and what's going on and why these people are doing this to some extent. Like I don't know who should do that if I don't know how we usually do this Evan, but if we want to like kind of outline what the overall story is, why they're on this drive, and then like how it is essentially this is like a folk hero story, like exactly like what Brandon was saying.
And it's funny as you were saying that, like because he's a folk hero on like a CB radio, and I'm thinking like this would be now it'd be like on Reddit or something. But here it's like CB radio.
Oh, that's so sad. But yeah,
so to your point, like so basically we just all of a sudden we learn that, well, I guess they very briefly tell you that there's like this big thing about bootlegging Coors beer from Texarkana, Texas to Atlanta or wherever, because it's illegal. And then they just introduce you to Burt Reynolds just chilling on a hammock, just being like, yeah, what do you want? And these two guys come over and, the father and the son, and it's just the classic suits they're wearing. And apparently, actually, I'll just add is that his laugh on the hammock was apparently like him actually having never seen their outfits before, and it was like a true laugh. I just think that's perfect. It was he's like, that's the most honest laugh I've ever given in a movie. But
that's fucking hysterical.
I can hear that laugh. Yeah. That was a very earnest laugh. Like,
so they basically say they're going to give him $80,000, which is the equivalent of almost $400,000 now, to bring back 400 cases of Coors in 48 hours, which is 900 miles. 28 hours?
28 hours.
Yep.
28, yeah.
And 28 hours. Yeah, you're right. 28 hours. And it's 900 miles each way, so 1,800 miles.
It works out to be something of like a maintained average speed of like 60 miles an hour. It's actually
I did the math. That's like
64.
My first note. I was like, how fast does he have to go? It's 64 miles an hour, like just over 64 miles an hour. It's really not that fast average.
But they do a lot of putzing around and like not driving for a lot of
it. Yeah. Apparently Burt Reynolds and Sally Field had enough time to get it on in one scene. So they're really not in that much of a hurry, it seems like.
Yeah,
They're
that's
just
true.
that good. They're folk heroes. They are just so far above and beyond that they can do it. They can stop for meals. They got time to sleep. They can do it all.
400 horsepower for Reynolds.
No.
200 horsepower out of
200,
400
yes,
cubic
right.
inches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Well, okay. So since we're starting off with that, I think another worthwhile note is that you really like it is like a very working class versus the law movie. The closest you get to anyone like wealthy or powerful in this movie is Big and Little Enos. And holy fuck, are they the butt of the joke? Like they're the driving force, and that they're the ones that come up to the bandit and say, we got this bet for you. But their whole thing is to fuck everyone over because they keep making this bet with people just to get them in trouble and fuck with them, and that's what they're doing here. And from that point on, they are the butt of the joke. Like this is such like a working class fucking movie. This is about the worker, like even across like racial lines for the 70s, like everyone was working together because fuck the police and fuck these rich assholes.
Yeah, it was. I mean, so like basically the whole point of the movie is finally this bet that they've been making to lots of truckers. They've all gotten either arrested or crashed out or whatever it was. They finally offer this deal to the bandit, the big local legend, right? And so that's pretty much what the movie is they're doing this run in this time frame, and that is the whole story that's going on here. But one of the things that I noticed, like the opening scene right after the credits, which I also noted had like another unique song made just for the movie, which I was like, oh, that's cool. And I had never noticed it before. But so the first scene is actually another truck driver getting busted. Like that is our opening, is like cops show up and confront this other truck driver, and they're like, all right, let's see what's in the back. Sure enough, it's the Coors beer. And he's like, well, hey, listen, officer, I was put up to this by these two rich guys offering me a bunch of money to do it. And the cops go, don't you, when are you guys going to learn? Those, people offer the same deal to every trucker, worth their salt or whatever. And I found that really funny because I was like,
it really does paint the picture that the South is only about 500 or 600 people that just all know each other.
Well, yeah, acting as if they all knew. But the other thing that I found funny was like, so wait, you know who's doing this, you know who's driving this, and they are very much not in jail. And I was like, it really does set up that like the truckers are the ones facing the consequences, but like these rich assholes are not. And like it literally cuts from this scene of them telling him that they offer this to every truck driver. It cuts to the next scene with showing the back of their Cadillac convertible as they drive around with big, they're just goofy motherfuckers. And it's just so clear that like they're setting up this idea that like, yeah, these rich assholes get to do this and there are no consequences for them. Everyone else faces consequences.
The cops get to confiscate all the beer, so they don't want to arrest them, right? They want to keep the beer flowing. But yeah, like so as you said, like that's basically the rest of the movie. Is first, you kind of Burt Reynolds has to, or the bandit has to get his partner Jerry Reed, and they embark on their mission, and they're chased the entire time by Sheriff Buford T, Justice, played hilariously by Jackie Gleason, and then you have Sally Field, who within the first, I don't know, they've already gotten the beer at this point, right? When they pick her up, they're on the way back.
So actually within the first 20 minutes, the Enos guys offer the deal to the bandit. He convinces his friend and fellow truck driver, the Snowman, to join him on this. And basically he says, look, I'm going to drive the blocker car. So I'm going to drive out ahead of you and get the attention of the police so that they don't stop you in the truck behind. And so then his friend agrees, which I got to do a side tangent. I also found it very weird and kind of goofy that like the bandit's like, all right, well, if I'm going to take this deal from y'all, I'm going to need money for a blocker car. And they just hand him the money for a car and they're counting it out. And he's like, I need a speedy car. And they give him more money and goes, speedier than that. And they give him more money, which is just comedy gold. But also I was like, they're just handing you the money to do this? Like, yeah, great. I'd like to get a Lamborghini, please. Like, what?
Yeah, in my head the whole time I'm just like, dude, fuck the $80,000. You have to work for that. They're giving you like probably like $5 or $10,000 up front, dude. Take the money and run.
Like they're paying like $10 per beer at this point or something like that.
I mean, a crazy amount. It's just this is rich guys with nothing better to do. And they I think they do a good job setting up that they don't actually give a shit about the beer. They just want to fuck with people. And this is just their rich
he's like,
guy
why
shit.
do you want the beer? And they're like, oh, we're having a party.
Yeah. It's kind of like that movie Rat Race in that regard. It's just rich people fucking with everyday people as for fun.
Yeah, just as entertainment. And to put the...
I mean, it's established that no one has accomplished this yet. So it is 100% they are just keep fucking people over.
Yeah.
They also allude that Burt Reynolds, his friend Cletus, or the snowman, he had gone to prison. I don't think they say why, because of, antics that he had pulled, maybe some other kind of similar job. And, his wife's like, no, you don't do this. And he's like, well, $40,000, presumably if they're going to split it, is a life-changing amount of money. So they're just, again, fucking with these people for money that will change their lives, but means nothing to them. What's 80 grand?
Yeah, they carry this around in their pocket.
Yeah, he just got stacks of bills.
I did find one other thing I just wanted to make note specifically when they first approach the Bandit with this offer, and he lets out that very, awesome laugh as soon as he sees them. But I love what he did say after that, because I put it in my notes. I was like, this is such a good fucking line. His first instinct is to laugh in their faces and then insult them by saying, oh, I love your suits. It must be a bitch getting a size 68 extra fat and a 12 dwarf. I was like, God damn. If that is not a working class hero, I don't know what is. Just that alone.
Yeah, Paul Williams said that made his career, actually, being in this, even though he was the butt of the joke, he kind of just loves it and got lots of work because of it. So fuck it. Yeah. There's just, just generally speaking, as you said, that there's tons and tons and tons of just really good jokes. And it kind of blows my mind that many of them were just ad-libbed when they're in the moment. It's really, really funny. And lots of kind of double entendres and, hidden meaning where they, say one word when they mean another. It's just
everything over the CB radios was in
Oh, yeah.
Everything there. And double entendres, the whole bit. I loved every interaction on the CB radios. But yeah, actually, I remember because I kind of did a number of side tangents there, but I was getting to the point where I was trying to set up the idea that within the first 20 minutes of the movie, they did all of this shit, got this all together, and they had already gotten to Texas to pick up the beer within 20 minutes. And then a couple minutes later, so basically they had no problems going out. None whatsoever. There was one cop that the Bandit got the attention of and lost very easily. And then also notably breaks the fourth wall as he's he looks at the camera and just kind of gives a little smile and then takes off.
I really appreciated that because at no other point in the movie does anything like that happen.
No.
That's the only fourth one.
So the funny thing that Burt Reynolds said, he's like, oh, are you sure you want me to do that? And he says to Needham, the director, he's like, oh, that's breaking the fourth wall. And apparently Hal Needham with completely deadpan goes, what's that?
That's so awesome.
Was this his first time directing a movie? Because he was a stuntman mostly, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. I didn't realize that.
I think it was his, I think so.
He actually did the stunt of jumping the car over the bridge, I think.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's very cool.
That is cool. That's a cool director right there. Oh, no, don't worry. I got the car jump. Yeah, that's all me, actually.
So he was the second director on Gator. I guess that's how he and Burt Reynolds became friends. But that's not not the main director. But yeah, so this is his first shot. Apparently he didn't really know. I couldn't find much about the technical, but apparently it was just kind of makeshift kind of nonsense on the set, which makes sense given it. But yeah, all the lines are really good. I had a bunch of them written down. I can't find.
So one of my favorite is you ought to quit smoking. It's bad for your health, but I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, and then she visibly
as she's smoking the first cigarette of her life.
Uncomfortable.
I just started.
My favorite joke was probably when Sally Fields looks over at the Speedo and says, "Are we really going 110?" But doesn't seem to understand that that's kilometers.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I paused it and rewound because I was like, wait a second, what? And when you look at it, they're going 110 kilometers
So
an
65
hour.
miles an hour.
They're going slow.
Yes.
Well, they only have to go 64, so that they're good.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so if anything that I will give them credit for the challenge of this is sure an average maintained speed of around 65 for 28 hours, but how the fuck long does it take to go pick up his buddy Snowman, to go buy a car? That's like an entire afternoon right there. And like,
I don't know
like
when they start the clock exactly, but I presume they buy the car before the clock starts. I hope.
Well, I was assuming that the clock started at the truck rodeo.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Like that's when he handed him
I
the
don't
money.
think that's possible.
Yeah.
Like, I literally actually do not think that even if he got that shit all together in 2 hours, they were running an hour ahead of schedule when they hit Texarkana. Or I think I think after they loaded the beer, they were a half an hour ahead of schedule. But they were ahead of schedule when they hit Texarkana.
Well, yeah, because
so,
the store hadn't opened yet. They broke in and stole the beer.
They broke into and stole the beer
Into the
and left a note. Just like, send the bill to
Another great line
little
in the
Enos.
movie is that they did not leave the note. Jerry Reed's character is writing the note, can't figure out how to spell the guy's name, and just goes, "Oh shit, I gotta go," and throws the notepad and just leaves.
I just like that he like gets in the forklift and he just kind of dipping around and just crushes a bunch of the beers.
Yeah,
too.
that was another one of my
Oh,
favorite
yeah.
lines when Jerry Reed's character says, "You can't drive a forklift," and he says, "I can drive any forking thing around." Just like so many
I
of
wrote
those
that line
great
down.
one-liners in this movie.
That is 100% a joke I would make.
Yeah, that
is,
felt like a Brandon joke for sure.
Well, I assume this movie, because at the time there was no PG-13, it was just a PG movie, just either that or R, and it's not. I mean, I guess you could say it's a kids movie. You could watch this for as a kid and probably not get most of the jokes, right? Because they've kind of hidden them in there with the innuendo and all that.
I'm always appreciative of like kids movies in general, because I think those are some of the best writers, because Disney movies do this. A lot of them do this where it's like they hide the humor really well that kids will not get it. You'll laugh at the same time, but the parents and the kids laugh for different reasons. I always appreciate that kind of writing. I think that's a real skill, and this movie I think definitely has some of that.
As a complete side tangent, I just watched Shrek 1, 2, and 3 the other day, and it has tons of that in it. If you haven't watched it in a while, go back and watch the first Shrek movie. It's full of just adult humor that is masterfully written in to be subtle and just above the head of the target audience.
It's so great. I love that. I do love that shit.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen the third one. I've watched the first one not that long ago, maybe 6 months ago, and I remember thinking, damn, this movie, I mean, I had seen it in a long time, and it is so many good jokes and so many things that are hidden in there that are, solid.
I another complete side tangent, but I got a lecture from my very Christian mother about Shrek after seeing it in the theater with her, because there's one scene where they roll a stone away from a tomb to allow Princess Fiona somewhere to sleep, and I was told that was making a mockery of Jesus' tomb. So yeah, you have that to look forward to.
That's kind of funny
if you go ahead and watch it now.
Well, I mean, I guess we.
I feel like that's giving Shrek a lot of power.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, you talked about how the cops in this movie are portrayed poorly, and I think we should talk about I mean, you also can say some of your favorite lines of like the Buford T justice. I mean, is just his entire shtick is just hysterical the entire time. But I'll have to think about my favorite line. But one of my favorite gags in the entire movie is his son. Once the car's roof gets pulled off, and he has to hold his hat every time they're driving around.
Yes.
It's just, I couldn't, every time they showed that on screen, I'm just like, what this is just,
and he keeps doing it when they're just walking around.
Yeah, he keeps his hand on his hat. That was so funny. I think one of my favorite...
and how he says, some bitch.
Some bitch, yeah. That's great. No, my favorite Buford T. Justice line is when he berates the cop who stops him for using foul language. And then as he's driving away, you hear a truck horn blare, and you just see him mouth the words, "and fuck off." And then he drives away.
I think one of the other excellent points and sort of major plot point when they pick up Sally Field's character, Carrie. She's wearing a wedding dress and she's hitchhiking. The bandit picks her up. She's fleeing her wedding. Now she is supposed to be marrying Sheriff Buford T. Justice's idiot son, who is a fucking dimwit the whole movie. And like he's in the car with the sheriff the whole time, and he is dumb as a box of rocks. But one of the things I love is as like they're driving in pursuit, and Sheriff Justice over here is like ranting and raving in the car, and she's like, she disrespected my authority, and that's nothing but good old fashioned communism.
I didn't notice that too. Yeah.
And I actually, one of our outros that we use for our show does have that line actually. But it's funny, he's like ranting and raving about how he feels personally slighted by what she did, while his son, who she left at the altar, is in the car with him, and he doesn't give a fuck about what he thinks. Like, he's like, yeah, and he's like, shut up. So, like,
his general vibe is too stupid to understand what has happened in his life.
But he's a total hottie. He's a classic himbo. I mean, hot and dumb as hell.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very funny that the cop is bitching and moaning about how this affects him instead of his son, which was just absolutely priceless.
Yeah, really never even pays lip service to the fact that his son might have some feelings about this.
Wait, does
great.
Is it Buford T. Justice who has the line where he says like or maybe does the son say, one of them says like, this is germane to the situation. He says the Germans have nothing to do with this.
Yeah, so
the black sheriff that they meet.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Who I want to add is the only competent police officer in this film. And I found that I was like, okay, this feels like a very deliberate choice. Like 1977, not a great time in this country. But like the one competent police officer that they portray in this film is the black sheriff. And he says like, oh, this isn't germane to the situation. And this idiot has no idea what that even fucking means. But like he thinks he's better than the black sheriff.
Since we're having that conversation, you cannot skip the interaction between the black sheriff and
yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say.
He is horrified. Like this is where it was being probably a PG movie really shines, because again, he can't use the hard R when he meets the black sheriff. So he's got to be like, oh, you're not what I expected. And, the subtext is really fucking obvious. And that he's like, oh, holy fuck, you're black.
Well, as he's walking away, like, so he actually meets him because the black sheriff's like, yo, dude, you're like way out of your jurisdiction. Like, you should fucking leave. Like, please stop what you're doing. And Buford T. Justice, of course, doesn't. But the bandit leads them on a chase, and this is where they do the big bridge jump because they got cornered on this dirt road and they had nowhere to go, so they jumped the bridge. And when the police tried to do it, also notably, the car that the black sheriff was in was being driven by a white sheriff's deputy who was the mayor's son, and notably not as competent. So like you have this like fairly competent black sheriff, and he's like paired up with the mayor's son who's driving the car.
If anybody in this movie made Buford Justice's son look smart, it was that dude. What there is no better word than yokel for that.
And just to drive Buford T. Justice's racism home, after they have this interaction with the black sheriff, he turns around and goes, "What has the world come to?"
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the line. That's the important line there. Is it was like, and it's so clear what he's talking about. But like he first even sees him, which basically they crashed. They didn't make it over the bridge when they tried to jump it. So they crashed, and the black sheriff's getting out of the vehicle, and that's where Buford T. Justice is standing on the bridge and says something. He calls him boy first, which of course very, very noticeable there. And he's like, where's, sheriff, whatever. And he's like, I'm the sheriff. And he almost like doesn't believe it at first. And he says something like, oh, I thought you'd be taller or something. And that's when he turns around and says, what is the world coming to? And you're like, God damn. Like, Buford T. Justice is literally, his character is just a parody of a conservative asshole. Like that's his whole shtick.
It really does make you wonder what the director was doing, because those were all such intentional decisions to make the one black sheriff the only competent person in law enforcement in this movie. Buford T. Justice is just like, not only like they went as hard as they could to make him racist under a PG rating as they could, and just so fucking dumb. And yeah, the one thing I was a little bit wasn't sure how to feel about was, he shows up and calls that sheriff boy, but he calls everyone in the movie boy. He is just condescending to everyone he speaks to.
He is.
And I'm wondering if they were doing that to make it seem less obvious that he was being racist towards the sheriff, or if that's, I really don't know, because I noticed that immediately, but then for the rest of the movie, he says that to everyone.
He does, and it's because he's a condescending asshole, but it's because like the next where he turns around and goes, "What is the world coming to?" It is so clear that he is just like unabashedly racist. So like it's reasonable to just kind of conclude that to some extent he was just being racist in that instance. But yes, he also does call everyone boy.
By the way, have you guys seen the James Bond movie Live and Let Die?
Mm-mm.
Is that the one that has Jackie Gleason in it for a minute?
Maybe he's in it, but there's a different like Southern racist sheriff in that one, Sheriff J.W. Pepper. And there's also a car jumping across a river. But it's I think it's set in Louisiana. And there's also people using CB radios to coordinate catching James Bond. I wonder how, like, that was in 1973. I wonder how much that influenced this movie, you know?
Oh, you know, in my head, I haven't seen that movie in so long. I just assumed that was the same character, but I actually thought that was Jackie Gleason. That's
I don't
totally
remember
different.
the actor's name, but it was a different guy. He might have been an English guy just putting on an accent, now that I think about it.
I would just like to say,
funny. In none of the things they said, they never mentioned that. I wonder if it got like seeped into his influence or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some similarities.
Clifton
there.
James was that guy. Yeah. It definitely. I actually always assumed that the two were connected because the behavior is so like similar and just such buffoons. Either way, good on this director for painting the police as racist assholes and like lifting up a working class hero to beat them. That rules.
Yeah, this movie, like, obviously it wasn't like, it's not perfect and progressive in every fashion, but like there are elements of it that actually are fairly progressive, especially for the time period when you're like, damn, all right, not wrong here.
Even the little old lady fucking knows that the bandit rules and fuck the police, man.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned before the funeral procession. I mean, that I think is one of the best of all of the like blocking the cops to go through, and they know what they're doing. They know they'd rather see the cops, anyone get away as long as the cops fail. Like, fuck them.
Also, mad respect to them having a CB radio in the house.
Yeah.
I also love that everybody would get onto the CB radio. So like there's this element of like a collective action where like people are listening in on the CB radios, but like when they participate, they all come in, nobody's awkward. Everyone's like, they come up with a name for themselves and they're like all in it to help the bandit. Like they are a part of this history. Everyone's all working together. Like even the funeral guys, he picks up the CB radio and like you see he like almost thinks for a second, he goes, "This is Gravedigger." And it was just like, it's this whole thing that like everybody's in on it. Everybody's got a name. Everybody's playing along. And it was really cool that just like how ubiquitous everything was. Like everyone knew who they were, and everyone was there to help. Old ladies, other truck drivers. There's a point which we'll probably talk about later where there's a sex worker who contacts them over the CB radio, letting them know she's going to take care of some of the police in the way, which becomes very relevant a little bit later.
Yeah, I love that's just so. We can talk about that now, but that scene is so funny because then the Buford Justice comes by and is like thinks he's arresting the bandit.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's actually just a different cop, like the sheriff or the whatever of that town.
Yeah. So the bandit's like on the radio is like, "Oh yeah, I'll come by. I'll have to come by and thank you sometime." She's like, "Why don't you come in person?" He's like, "Yeah, okay." He doesn't show up, but the fucking sheriff's like, "Oh, I got him. I'm gonna go." Well, then he goes and he pulls this guy out and he goes, "Yeah," and he's telling this other cop, "I got him. This is the bandit." And he's like, "Sir, that's my captain. And it's just yet another fucking cop who's like fucking soliciting, sex workers on the job, and he's the police captain. It's just one more instance of like, fuck the police.
And I think Buford T. Justice says something along the lines of, if you're going to be in a joint like this, at least wear a badge on your underwear or something. So that he knows you're a cop and he doesn't arrest you.
Well, yeah, and of course it's noticeable too that like the first thing that he fucking does as soon as he learns he's a cop, he's like, all right, I'm going.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, wait, excuse me? Wait a second, what, we're done?
I mean, at least he doesn't arrest the women. I guess that's the only...
Well, yeah, at least there's that. He was in a rush, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Dude, the more we talk about it, I cannot believe the way this movie uplifts like workers, criminals, like sex. Like, this movie is antithetical to everything modern conservatives would ever believe in, and would probably love this movie.
No, they do. It's so funny because, like, my dad loves this movie, and I'm like, my dude, did you watch this movie? It's making fun of you. I never understand that because I'm like, dude, a lot of conservative people will like watch movies and be like, this is great. And I'm like, it's antithetical to everything you believe, and you're a caricature in the film, and they're making fun of you.
Or they're thinking, or they think it's like the opposite, like it's making fun of liberals.
Yeah,
yeah. And you're like, no,
who's that politician
no
that was
comprehension? Like, name a better duo.
Yeah, who's that guy that was a big fan of Rage Against the Machine? Scott something.
The guy who told them to keep politics out of their
something like that.
Something like that.
Oh man.
Or when start with like there's I can't think of the conservative woman's name on. Forget her name. She was talking about like Starship Troopers on Twitter, being like, "Oh, this movie is pro-fascism." It's like, no,
no.
It's
so
not.
many people didn't understand that movie.
Yeah, or the iconic tweet of Star Wars isn't about Vietnam, not unless the U.S. is the empire. It's like, hey buddy, guess what?
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's almost amazing. I don't know. All these things make it. It's almost surprising. The studio, like this is a Universal Studio movie, and they didn't seem to have much issue with the movie going through, unless they just figured it's Burt Reynolds. He's like in a pretty, he's a popular person. He's starring in it, so we'll just let it go. I mean, I don't know. It seems almost shocking in a way.
I think this is when studios were more willing to risk a little bit on something, a little bit more creative, a little bit out of the norm, whereas nowadays they're just, making Marvel sequels or whatever.
I mean, yeah, that was the era that like Mel Brooks was big, right?
True.
Like, I feel like, so if that can get through, like there's a lot of humor that is, I would say, similar to like a Mel Brooks kind of film.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't a huge budget or anything. It was what you said,
4 million.
Yeah.
4 million, yeah. That actually reminds me of a fact I learned recently about, because you mentioned Mel Brooks, is when they're making Blazing Saddles, apparently the studio told Mel Brooks to make the movie less racist towards white people because they wouldn't, they're being too mean.
Jesus Christ.
They could never remake Blazing Saddles today.
Because Gene Wilder's dead?
I don't know. Just I saw some tweet where somebody's like, they could never redo that today because they completely missed the point.
Yeah.
That was another one of those. Hey, Rage Against the Machine, keep politics out of your music.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess another person we haven't talked about is Sally Field. You mentioned before, how she comes into the picture. She's, running away from her wedding from a man. I think she had said she had been with him knew him for 5 days or something, and they decided to get married. And then she's also like taking off and getting dressed under her wedding dress inside the moving vehicle, which is also pretty badass. And Burt Reynolds has the audacity to be like, "You have big calves."
Yeah.
He's like, "What are you talking about?" I don't know, maybe that's just been like a joke because he wanted her in the movie because he said that she was beautiful, when the studio's like, "Oh, she's not really sexy." And he's like, "No, she's sexy." It's apparently how she got, cast.
Well, and then they ended up dating, I think, after this.
Married, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I think, I don't know how long they got married for. Let's see. 4 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's an eternity in celebrity marriages. So
1976 to 1980.
I had forgotten about that, but that tracks because they did have really good on like kind of weird but good on
Yeah,
screen
I was
chemistry.
gonna say it was really odd that she was so into the Bandit. Like it didn't really seem there was like a lot of pretense for it. She was just like,
I mean, that's kind of her character,
Yeah.
though. Like, because she did mention it. Like, she's like, "Oh, I had this like crazy, relationship. I really thought he was the one. We were together for 8.5 days." So, like, it becomes clear, like, she has a habit of like falling hard and fast. And I can't help but feel like, thank God she didn't marry this dimwit fucking person she was gonna marry. Because you're like, God damn, dude. I don't know what you got in 5 days that convinced you that he's all right, but like, you didn't talk to him. So that's all I can.
Maybe she
say
met
there.
Buford T. Justin, and she's like, "No, I can't. This guy can't be my father-in-law.
Can you imagine?
This fucking asshole." Because she doesn't seem to like cops. I mean, she's not very obvious about it, I guess, but she's clearly not against the fact that they're just literally just driving away from cops and evading them the entire.
I mean, the subtext of this movie is literally nobody likes police.
at one point she does flip off the cops, like when they're trying to get a blockade.
That's true.
Like removed from the road, they do a big slide in the middle of the highway and stop, and she just leans out the window and flips off the cops, and they turn around and peel out.
Yeah. Well, so that was the one time when they finally, when a cop pulled over the truck and was going to was going to take him to jail.
That's right.
That's when, and so like all it took for them to get the cops away from the truck was just pulling up, giving him the finger, and then he's like, "Oh!" He gets all mad and then chases after him, and it's like, wow. Excellent. Y'all are so predictable.
They have the attention span of a goldfish or something.
And the ego is
the other thing I liked about.
I mean, if that's all it took to stop a traffic stop from happening was getting flipped off. Like they obviously don't care that much about, like, enacting the law. They're just hurt their feelings and they're like, well, that can't slide. I can't be flipped off by some lady in a car, so I'm gonna chase after them.
One of the other things I liked about her character is like early on she's like doing all this stuff. She's very careless, like taking off her wedding dress in the car, which is a whole production. At one point she's driving and decides like she's gonna switch seats while they're driving with the Bandit. Like she's very unsafe in these ways, but like one of the things she does is like she gets scared. She's like, "Oh my God, you're driving so fast and recklessly." She like gets out of her seat and like starts to like head towards the back of the car, not wearing a seatbelt. And I'm like, if you're scared of what's happening, you should be wearing a seatbelt. And she's like out of her seat and like trying to go to the back. And you're like, that's the worst thing you could be doing right now. So I found that to be actually kind of extra funny there, is that she was like just freaking out and not doing anything safe remotely.
That's when she has her joke to like the 10-100 and I wish it was a 10-200.
Real terms, actually.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
I
was going to say maybe. Go ahead.
I think that this, there was a big like thing in the 70s around CB radios and truckers. Like that was sort of a cultural phenomenon that this sort of, I don't know, tapped into, I guess. Like there's that movie Convoy also, and I'm sure there's other ones. But like, I wonder how realistic it was that just everyone had a CB radio in their car, like in this movie.
A friend of mine's dad installed a CB radio in their house with a 30-foot antenna.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like, I can't say how prolific it was, but like it was not uncommon for every fucking custom van in the 70s and 80s had a CB in it. It was fairly common in cars. Yeah, like this is probably like dramatizing it, but dude, they were kind of everywhere.
I feel like that was like the social media of the time.
Yeah.
Like in a way, right? Like you could connect with random people within range, and a lot of truckers used them. So like, yeah, I'm sure that was kind of a big thing.
Yeah, you would let people know if, cops hiding somewhere, you get past them, you don't get pulled over, you hop on the CB and let people know what mile marker the police are hiding at.
Well, apparently one of the big jumps in CB radios was in I think it was like 1973 or 74 when there was the oil crisis. And people could tell others when they're like where they could find gasoline for their cars or trucks. So, I mean, I don't know what percentage of people were owning them at that point, but I bet it was, it was probably essential if you're a trucker. And then I don't know about cars, but probably entertaining when you're driving. They didn't have, Howard Stern to keep you company in 1973.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that. I used to do over the road trucking, like expedited freight kind of thing, where I'd be doing super long runs kind of like this, where it's like, all right, I've got 24 hours and I've got to get across the country. And so I did driving like that, and it's boring. Yeah, I could see that. So if you don't have like podcast, I survived on podcasts. Without podcasts, yeah, I'd probably need to be talking to people on the CB radio. So I get it.
I spent a lot of time in tractor trailers in the late 80s and early 90s because my dad was a trucker and we used to take me on the road with him all the time, and he was on the fucking CB constantly.
You need people to talk to. Like, I used to talk on the phone to like friends who were also doing trucking and stuff. Like, I'd call them up and we'd like chat for 2 or 3 hours. I would chat with my partner. We first started dating. I was actually driving the truck. And one of the ways we got to know each other really well, really fast was because I was in the fucking truck. And so we would talk on the phone for like 1 to 3 hours per day, just like talking on the phone. So, yeah, I got to know my partner real fast that way. But so, yeah, I could see the CB radios would be the main form of entertainment, I'm sure, for truckers.
What was like the range? Because it seems like if you're in Texas, could people in Georgia be listening to your conversation? No, right? That's to be much short.
No, it's you've got a range of miles, if not less than that. And it depended heavily. Like souping up a CB radio was like a whole phenomenon. There were CB radio shops that specialized in like, boosting your signal and like, there are different channels. So like if you're in a congested area, you might go to it. That's what they were talking about early on in the movie. Like they're coming up with like, we'll switch to, if you say go to channel 9, I'll go to channel 3 and all that stuff. That's because, there was 20 some odd different channels that you'd switch between if everything else is crowded. And so I used to go over the road trucking too. And I remember if I would go in New Jersey, there were these people that had hopped up radios that would just drown everyone out for 15 miles. Like they'd be the only people you could hear if they were on.
Well, that actually makes it seem like the legend of the Bandit is like even greater. If people across like miles and miles of distance know who he is, he's clearly like, a legend across, I guess that's your job also.
I mean, well, I guess they also set up that like he was at this like where they approached him initially with the offer was at a truck rodeo where they do like, truck races and shit and like goofy stuff.
Is that
like,
a real thing?
There are
absolutely is.
Yeah, there is. There's truck drag racing. I once went to a like, how there's like car shows where like you see classic cars and shit. I went to a truck show of that.
Those are fucking sick.
Dude,
I love those fucking trucks.
Oh my God, it was so fucking cool. So I was in, I think like Joplin, Missouri. I was at a truck stop, just chilling. And then like across the street, there's like a fucking semi truck show. And I was like, yo, I'm going to go look at, they had these things like all decked out in gorgeous paint, everything. I was like, so it's very cool. In those areas, it is a cultural thing. And I'm sure at this time it was even more so. So like you've got more custom trucks. Which that's the other thing we haven't mentioned. The truck that they are driving on the trailer is like a big fucking cool ass painting and shit. Like it was cool as fuck.
Dude, oh God, what did the one guy even say about his truck? He's like, anybody who would paint their truck like that would do something.
Yeah.
I don't remember what he said.
But it was something.
Dude, his whole trailer is just like like a stagecoach being pulled by a bunch of horses or something like that.
Yeah,
it's a picture of a bandit holding up a stagecoach. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Is it really?
I've never picked up on that.
Oh, that's excellent.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, like this is a very like you can see like the truck is iconic. He's iconic as a driver. He's obviously traveled around to these different truck rodeos. So like he's gonna have a name, and this is where he gets that kind of like folk hero status. And so I guess it's like it's not that unexpected that so many people would know him and would listen to the traffic and know that he's doing this run and help him out.
Also, if like everyone's aware that like this was during a period when like truck drivers were like the modern day outlaw, and that was like a cultural phenomenon in its own right.
Yeah.
Because there's an insane amount of movies about truck drivers being like outlaw badass guys. This isn't even Jerry Reed's only movie where he's a truck driver.
I sometimes
it's his best one, but
I sometimes wonder where that mentality went, where it's like there was a time where like we looked up to criminals, where we were like cheering for the criminals. And then now it's like, no one's cheering for any criminals. I'm like, what? We just like, we lost that, like, I don't know, working class solidarity of just like rooting for the little guy against the police to just like carve out a little living in this fucking shitty economic
Honestly,
system. Like
I blame Dick Wolf. Honestly, like
Yeah.
the Law and
Yeah.
Order shit has really tainted the public's view of what the police do.
Propaganda
Yeah,
is
and
fucking
it is
real.
strong.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, and the thing is now people will root for who they think is the good guy. I mean, like, think about it. In any Marvel movie, you're basically rooting for like American imperialism,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, but it's actually the bad guy, and people just unironically are just rooting for them in every single fucking movie they make. So they've twisted over to who the bad guy is. Now it's like China or I don't know, some other place, and then they just yeah.
When they remade Red Dawn and North Korea invades America.
Oh, I remember that.
that
I
true?
saw that and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, half of them are.
If only.
In the remake of Red Dawn, North Korea invades America.
Wasn't it like the script was for it to be China, and then they're like, oh wait, we don't want to piss off China with this, so they just like digitally changed all the
something like
flags
that.
or something.
Oh God, with Chris Hemsworth, man, this looks terrible. I haven't seen that. Like, I actually didn't realize they had remade it, but that's terrible.
Yeah,
You've seen the original though?
Yeah, I've seen the original.
Half of the Marvel movies, the villain is just some nondescript Arab country.
Yeah.
They're just like, they're brown and we're terrified of them. Let's kill them.
They're evil for no reason. Don't ask any questions. They just
They
hate
hate our
us.
freedom and democracy. There's no pretext to this.
Oh man, now I feel like I need to do an episode on Red Dawn. That would be the original Red Dawn, not this new one.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in forever.
I mean, if you want to go into some Red Scare shit, that might be peak in terms of cinema. That might be peak Red Scare.
It's set in Colorado,
Patrick
but
Swayze,
filmed in
right?
New Mexico, I think.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Um,
What's the other thing I was? Oh, go ahead.
I feel like now is a good time just because anytime like North Korea is mentioned as like a villain of whatever in propaganda, I always mention Blowback season 3.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't listened to it, phenomenal. It is on the Korean War, and believe me, learning about that shit is fucking wild. So yeah, it's very good if you want to know more about the history of how the North wound up where it is and how the whole Korean peninsula exists today. That's a really good podcast to listen to.
Yeah, I would highly. I'd second that. It's phenomenal. I think the new one is coming out pretty soon. Cambodia, maybe.
oh yeah.
Oh no.
I think season 5.
Yeah, I know the last one was Afghanistan, which is also every season of that. That's probably one of the best podcasts out there, in my opinion. Like, that is top tier shit.
I think
Not
in
like
terms
us.
of all
Ours
time
is dog
greats,
shit.
it's. I was going to make a joke about how it's third behind Left of the Projector and Cars and Comrades.
Well, that's just assumed.
Yeah.
I mean,
They hardly talk about cars or movies at all on that.
Yeah, it's
That's
actually really lacking.
well, they briefly talked about in the Afghanistan one. They briefly talk about the opening to what's that?
Was it one of the Rambo movies?
The Rambo 2, or it's
yeah.
like the faked opening credit.
Right.
We think.
I feel like they also talk about bringing in all the Toyota trucks at one point.
Oh, do they? I don't know if I remember that.
I feel like I remember that being mentioned, but I wouldn't swear it's true.
I actually I tried to reach out to Noah Colwyn to be on this podcast. He didn't respond to me. Oh well,
Because he's not as great as us.
Yeah.
that's okay.
Well, there's your problem. Never return my emails. So, or
Yeah.
Ralph Nader for that matter.
Oh, that would have
That's
been
right.
nice.
We were trying to get Ralph Nader on.
I don't want to be weird, but I found a connect.
Really?
So if we still want to get Ralph Nader on, I might know
Hell
who
yeah,
to talk
sure.
to.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're in.
That's
I can ask.
will he listen to the your other episodes? You're just gonna go in blind.
I hope he never listens to
Yeah.
any of our episodes, because then he will definitely not
I think
come
we
on.
were pretty nice to him, but
I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
we're still-
talking about his book. Yeah, we were great.
I'm not saying we were mean to him. I'm just saying in general, like, I won't speak for everyone, but I'm a crazy person, and I feel like anyone who listens to me rant through a whole episode is not going to want to join in.
yeah, he is a little bit more of a serious character than all of us. But
Yeah, with his like those shoes. I don't remember the stat you said about his shoes, which was crazy.
oh yeah, like he
Right? Didn't he have
he
something
liked
crazy?
he found a type of shoe that he liked and bought like 100 pairs of them or something like that.
Just wears them each in a
Yeah.
row. Like his His closet's probably like 4 suits and 40 pairs of the same shoe.
Something like that. Yeah.
It only just occurred to me that maybe Ralph Nader's autistic.
Yeah, he's some sort of neurodiverse person, I would say, probably.
See, that sort of thing never registers to me because I don't know, autistic people make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm over here thinking I should do that with my
person.
shoes. I don't know why I don't do that already. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I've worn the same style and brand of shoes and the same style and brand of pants for 15 years.
Hey, when you find what works, fucking go with it. Yeah.
I buy a couple of few pair at a time so I don't ever have to figure out what I'm wearing.
Smart.
And people never know if I'm just wearing dirty clothes because they're like, I don't know, he only owns one thing.
Is one of them the blue suit that they wear in this movie, or no? Because if it's not, then I don't know.
The big Enos guy, I mean.
The big Enos
I've
guy.
been looking for one in my size,
They only come in like big and small. I think apparently these. What was like those? I guess. Well, so I guess to like I don't know, spoil the end. They're gonna obviously they get to the end. And I guess the funniest thing is that they bring the beer and then they say like, oh, we'll do double or nothing.
Yeah.
And they tell them to go to Boston to bring back clam chowder in 18 hours, which is really
hours,
far away.
That one's insane. That is not a thing you're going to do.
Well, yeah. And so like they come in and so I found it interesting. Like they come in hot, right? The truck is fucking breaking down barriers getting into there. They get there and then they're like, all right, give us the fucking money. We have to run from the police this instant. Like we need a car. We have to get the fuck away. Because like by the end it culminates in like they're being chased by Sheriff Buford T Justice along with all kinds of local sheriffs, state troopers. They have a fucking police helicopter chasing them at one point. So when they come in, they're coming in hot. They're like, all right, here's your fucking beer. Give us the money. And they're like, well, how about you do double or nothing? And they're like, yeah, sure. Okay. Like with no details. They're like, yeah, we're into it. We have to run immediately. And we've now made a decision. And then they work out the details are go to Boston, bring us clam chowder in 18 hours. And again, this just goes to the point that like these rich guys have nothing. They don't care. None of this matters. They're just like, all right, how about you do this harder one so that we don't have to fucking pay you? And the bandit
probably
agrees
like
to
800 miles each
Well,
way.
it's gonna take
so
him 18 hours just to get out of Boston, probably.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, they don't have the big dig yet. It'd be fucked.
Yo, I got sidetracked and I need to share this with you. So Smokey and the Bandit has 2 sequels, which get worse and worse.
I didn't know that until last night, and then I was like, oof, I've never seen those. Probably not
I need
good.
to read the synopsis from IMDb of Smokey and the Bandit 2.
Okay, 1, is it about them getting the clam chowder? I'm assuming
No.
it is. That's
No.
a
Elephant,
crime.
right?
That
Yeah.
should be illegal.
Well, because I
ridiculous.
couldn't remember what the second one was about, so that's why I even Googled it. I'm going to read this word for fucking word. Folk hero the Bandit has fallen on bad times, but comes to life when he is hired to help transport a pregnant elephant to a Republican convention in Dallas.
Why?
God.
Why does that exist?
Oh God.
Did they get the clam chowder? I don't even know. Oh, that's why is
You're too focused on the continuity here.
yeah? Well, a pregnant elephant? That's not good. Don't put that in a truck and drive real fast. Like, what are you doing? What's nah?
That one's got Dom DeLuise in it.
Oh,
Who?
Dom DeLuise.
I don't know who that is.
I forget that I'm the oldest.
I
one.
know he was a
I
character.
I don't know
I've
any
heard the name.
celebrities though.
I've heard the name.
He was sort of an eccentric actor back in the day. He's real over the top.
wait, are you older?
Huh.
I don't know if you're older
What
than
was
me,
the
Brandon.
third one?
I just remember that the tagline is Smokey is the Bandit. I think
Ew.
that they get Jackie Gleason to actually be the good guy in that one.
Boo!
Oh, that
I'm
doesn't make
against
any
it now.
sense.
That's
I-
horseshit.
Also, for some reason they make they like swap everything around, and Jerry Reed is the Bandit in that movie.
Oh, I mean, that's kind of cool.
Well,
Oh,
he's got like a
feel
mustache in there. Like they could, I don't think they could get Burt Reynolds for this one, so they tried to make him look like Burt Reynolds.
No, Burt Reynolds is in the second one, I think.
I'm talking about the third
Oh, the
one.
third one.
Yeah,
Oh,
by the
Jesus.
third, he's probably like, all right, this is horse shit now. I don't want to do it. I feel like we
You will
should
be
mention
glad to know that Big and Little Enos are in
Oh,
all
okay.
of them.
that is good to know.
It-
I also think it's important to mention, for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, Smokey is referring to a police
Yes.
officer. any police officer they're referring to on the CB radios as Smokey. So the title Smokey and the Bandit is about the fucking police. Which I don't think we've actually ever clarified.
Because it could easily be another character named Smokey. So yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I love that they call cops Smokies in this. It's so good and like perfectly derogatory for a PG rating. Like I feel like if they had a higher rating or like an R rating, they would have just called this movie Pigs and the Bandit. And I love that about it.
I know Smokey was common like slang back then. I don't really know the origins of it or how derogative it even necessarily was.
It feels derogatory to me because I see it as kind of like, calling like pigs in a blanket little Smokies, or like, the little wieners, like little Smokies, is kind of just one step removed from calling cops pigs. And I don't know. I just enjoy that.
It's hard to imagine any nickname for cops not being derogatory. So I kind of feel you there. It's like, yeah, it was probably meant to be a pejorative.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't calling them officers of the law. They were not calling them.
There was no respect in the
definitely
term,
not.
clearly.
I looked it up, and it's because they wore big cowboy hats like Smokey the Bear.
Okay.
Oh my God. I assumed that Smokey the Bear came later.
Oh, no, that's like from the 20s or something.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was or maybe even earlier. It was Teddy Roosevelt had a bear cub named Smokey because he rescued it from a forest fire. Yeah.
Oh, no shit.
That actually reminds me of a thing that I forgot to mention. We were talking about Coors earlier. Apparently, Dwight Eisenhower, when he was president, would also steal Coors and bring it back to the White House because he couldn't get it, except for in Colorado.
I feel like that's not stealing. If you're the president, like you're basically a king. You could just be like, "Give me the thing," and they'll give it to you. I don't know if there's. Well, I mean, I guess you could steal the wealth of other nations and whatnot as you plunder the world with your imperialism. But like that's a little different.
We don't call that stealing.
Alternate plot for this movie: FDR contacts the Bandit. He wants a truckload of Coors beer delivered to Washington D.C. in 28 hours.
And he's like also works as a CIA agent, so like on the side.
Yeah, actually, if it's secret remake of Smokey and the Bandit, he's just running cocaine for the CIA.
This is literally the Archer episode where they spoof Smokey and the Bandit. This is exactly what happens.
Oh, right.
in that episode of
That's right.
Archer. Yeah.
Or what's that movie with
which,
Tom
again,
Cruise where he's smuggling coke for the cartels or whatever, and there's like a CIA connection? It's like, oh shoot, American Made, I think is what it's called.
I don't think I've ever seen a Tom Cruise movie. Like, I don't think it's possible. Is it? What movies is he in? Was he even...
He was in all of them for 20 years.
Was he? All I remember is he danced on Oprah's couch or something, or stood there. I don't know. I just know that that's a reference. He was in that fucking airplane movie that I never saw. So
every Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
never saw those.
You're talking about Top Gun. I love that you just referred to Top Gun as that airplane movie.
That's not to be confused with the movie Airplane, which is
Tom Cruise is not in Airplane, just so we're clear.
All right, I continue to hold that I don't think I've ever seen a Tom Cruise film. Good for me.
Count yourself lucky,
you're
bud.
not missing out, I don't think.
At an hour and a half, do we want to wrap this up? Because right now we're talking about Tom Cruise.
I did want to. Okay, I wanted to have a quick conversation about some of the comical damage that is incurred by Buford T. Justice as the car gets increasingly damaged throughout the movie.
Oh, Daddy, the top came off.
I love when he says throw the evidence in the back, and he just like puts the door in the back of the car. That's
right, because
no, it's even better than that. He gets in. He's like put the evidence in the car, and he climbs into the passenger seat with the car door in his lap. He's like, put it in the back, Junior.
Well, and the door was knocked off because a trucker who was listening in on the CD radio, was gets this crazy look in his eyes, and he's like, he sees the cop car pulled over with the door open, and he drives through and takes the door off. And the Buford T. Justice is like, I saw that. You did that on purpose. Well, he's just gone. He drives away. So by the end, I mean, the car had lost its top at some point when they drove under a truck that was like crossing the road, carrying something not in a traditional truck bed, but like, so it's crossing the road. The Bandit, their car, they miss it. They change directions, and the sheriff's car goes under it, shears the whole fucking roof off, which pretty big damage. They duck their heads, whatever, and it takes the roof off. But there was so much damage to this car that I love that they continue driving it. No door, no top. At one point, the horn gets stuck on. They're driving around and the horn's just blaring.
I've been in that situation. It is unfortunate.
Apparently, at the end, they could actually barely even drive the car. They had destroyed it so much where they, like, when he's actually rolling out of the fair at the end, like, it actually was struggling to actually drive.
Like in real life, you mean? And when they're making
in
the
real
movie?
life, Oh, yeah. He has so many good lines. There's one other one that I was trying to remember. Oh, man. I lost the one. I like that he asked for the Diablo sandwich, which is apparently a real thing, the Diablo chicken sandwich, and then a Dr. Pepper.
Wait, like at that particular restaurant or something? Because I was wondering, I'm like, how the fuck does he know what to order? Yeah. That was my question. I was like, he's way behind Texas. How does he know?
I think that just means a spicy chicken sandwich.
Yeah, apparently I think that was in Arkansas where they were, I think. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's in Arkansas where
I think it's in Arkansas.
Yeah, I think it's apparently
also, since we're discussing that, can we acknowledge that they refer to like truck stop restaurants as choke and pukes?
Yeah. I would also like to point out that the Bandit orders 2 cheeseburgers and an iced tea, and his total is $1.50, which is just infuriating to hear in the year 2024.
Well, and actually, I did take notes about this. That is a scene where the Bandit and Sheriff Buford T. Justice encounter each other in person, unbeknownst to the sheriff, who's like coming in screaming, ranting, raving. And actually, I forgot, this is kind of a major point that I wanted to make. He's like screaming about how he's chasing this maniac, and the Bandit's just like calmly at the counter, like, "Oh man, that's crazy! Wow, tell me more about this guy you're chasing." He's like, "Oh, he's guilty of kidnapping. He attempted murder of 20 officers." So like, as it goes on, and it was like making the point that like this cop can just lie and make shit up and like inflate the charges to this absurd degree. So like you hear him describing the most deranged criminal in all time, and we know the Bandit's the hero of this film. None of the shit he's saying is fucking true. This cop just lies through his fucking teeth. And I found that like that was a deliberate choice when they made this film, like that the cop is just fucking making up this whole story and like twisting everything that has happened into this is the worst criminal ever. And it's like, no, it's not. So, and I also found it funny, like as he's like yelling to the Bandit about this maniac that he's chasing, not knowing who he's talking to, he's like speaking in a way that like he spits on the face accidentally of the Bandit, who like calmly like wipes it away from his eye, like, and just like without missing a beat, like wipes away his spit and like keeps like asking him questions. But like it was pretty amusing that like they come face to face like this, and then we know that the fucking sheriff is just sitting there lying and being an asshole, and it's a great portrayal of police.
Yeah. Maybe the greatest portrayal ever in a movie.
Definitely the most accurate.
One thing I wanted to ask Brandon is like, how accurate are the Georgia accents in this, or do you think they're kind of hamming it up a little bit?
Okay, so truck drivers, in my experience, which is pretty a lot because my dad and all of his friends were drivers, tended to be kind of an over-the-top eccentric crowd. So like, honestly, I'm not good at hearing Southern accents because I'm really fucking used to it. But I mean, I don't know. I would say it's a slight exaggeration, but more in terms of like the movie is about a group of characters that are like supposed to be kind of over the top and interesting, but none of the accents didn't really stand out to me as too much.
Yeah, I couldn't tell myself because I know.
I mean, like everything. If anything, I fucking love Jerry Reed. If anything, he dialed it back to play that character. He was in real life, just a really like raucous, fun, happy, over the top kind of guy.
Cool. I'll have to look.
And also like one of probably the most talented guitar players in the history of country music.
You know,
does anybody want a very brief story about how he became famous?
Sure.
Yeah.
of course.
He sold a song to Elvis to play, but because he was such a good guitar player, they had to bring him they had to like track him back down. He was in Georgia at the time, and they had to ship him out to wherever Elvis was because Elvis could not, like nobody in the recording studio could figure out how to play the song the way that Jerry Reed had written it.
That's awesome.
He got famous because he had to go in to actually teach them to play his music. And
that's amazing.
He had like written music for people before and was not unestablished, but that really got him to the next level where he was able to like take off from there.
Cool.
That's sweet. I think speaking of Jerry Reed, I forgot my thought. Whoops. Oh well, it's gone.
You know, real quick, I'll
it.
say one thing I appreciate about this movie was just like all the 70s style in their fashion and hairstyles and everything. It's
such a good time
it's kind of like looking at pictures of my parents when they were in high school, but it's just amusing, I think.
There's more than a couple of second gen Ford vans too, which hits me right in the heartstrings. Although I am confused as to why all the ones in the movie are running.
It was the time period. They were close to new back then.
Yeah, so. I stand by what I said.
Okay, I was like, oh, you know what? That doesn't mean a lot, actually. I do remember my point about Jerry Reed, by the way. I was going to point out that also I found it especially cool that the iconic song for the movie is Eastbound and Down, which I don't know if we can add that song into like the outro or something, but at the beginning of the movie, it's actually Westbound and Down.
Okay.
So the song is actually different at the beginning of the movie. So I extra cool on Jerry Reed to write basically two songs that are very similar, but are at different points of exposition for the movie.
I think he would be okay with me putting the songs at the beginning and the ends of this movie.
Probably. Hopefully it doesn't cause a problem or whatever.
I put like
platforms.
Occasionally put things in like a Lord of the Rings, like whatever. And there's no like monetary gain from this podcast, so they can't. What are they going to sue me from? Like the $0.
Yeah, exactly.
I put a 2-second clip of a Cake song in one of our episodes, and then when I uploaded it to YouTube, they said, we're not allowing this to be visible in Russia. So that was the only consequence of that.
Okay.
I did see a bunch of emails come through from YouTube as soon as you uploaded our shit. Like, we've removed this, we've removed that. I was like, God damn, like chill out. We're not fucking doing anything or making any money here. Like, come on.
I looked up the Smokey and the Bandit soundtrack, and there is a separate recording for Westbound and Down and Eastbound and Down. But there's also a track on the soundtrack called March of the Rednecks.
Hell yeah.
I wonder if that's the song that they play
amazing.
when all of the people leave the gas station to block up the cops. And they're all in like the hot rods and everything.
That might be.
This is an entire movie about people blocking the police.
It's so great.
Awesome.
They make fun of the police, and they also like display like this working class solidarity that is just like so cool to see on screen. And everyone who sees this movie gets it, and they're on the right side. Everybody's like, yeah, solidarity with the working people. And I'm like, can we do that in real life? Can we have like just the real thing? Just be like that. Just be like these people. They're all cool and amazing. You should want to emulate them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now there is one thing I did want to mention too. As we have all this praise for the movie, I didn't want to like entirely leave it up to like, oh, it's so great and everything. There is some sexism in this movie.
For sure.
It was that time period, but like it is. Watching it back, I was like, all right, yeah, it's there. So like they have some kind of progressive feel towards like racial politics and just generally a lot of progressive ideas. One of those ideas is not feminism. Unfortunately, like some of it feels a little tongue in cheek, kind of like everything else, but some of it I was like, nah, this feels a little bit like just regular old sexism. So, warning anyone who does listen or who does choose to like watch this movie, it's there. I don't think it's like overbearing to a point where it's like unwatchable, but like it's there.
Yeah. And there was a little note of casual racism where the truck driver that takes the door off the sheriff's car is an Asian guy, and he yells bonsai as he does it. So,
yeah.
Appropriate or not, I did laugh at that. It was, you just don't, in the 70s, you just didn't see a lot of Asian people.
I guess so, yeah.
Appropriate, no, but
yeah. So like the film had
its
its issues, right? It's from 1977. It's going to be certainly imperfect and problematic in a number of ways. What is more surprising to me is the ways in which it was less problematic than you would expect. It overall had pretty reasonable politics, I feel like. And, saying cops are bad and making fun of them, always good politics. That's great. So, but it did seem like this story, the folk hero status of the bandit really did unite people across gender, racial, identity, religion, whatever. It seemed to unite everybody in the working class around this mission of the bandit beating the police and, getting one over on the rich guys who thought he couldn't do it. So like there are good things, there are problems with it, of course. But overall, I feel like
it is a little bit of a male fantasy movie, kind of like a James Bond movie or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
Yes, this
it was
movie
my
is
male
very
fantasy.
much targeting my people.
Is it redneck exploitation? What did you call it, that? Or trucker exploitation?
I would argue yes, which I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but like, yeah, in that weird, incredibly specific subset of movies from the era, yeah, I would lump this into that. Because like I said, like trucker movies were all the rage, and this one and Convoy were the big two, which I also would have accepted doing Convoy because Chris Christopherson was another fucking badass working class hero.
Actually, you know what else struck me about this movie? Weirdly, they actually spend way less time talking about the car than I would have expected. In a lot of ways, the car kind of feels like an afterthought. They never actually, I don't think they ever actually say what engine it has. They don't ever actually like spend any time being like, yo, this car is fast. They don't ever say, they just like, it's just driving. He has the car now and he's driving. They don't talk about what engine it has. They don't talk about, look, oh, this thing's a stick shift, or they don't talk about, or automate. They talk about none of it. They don't talk about the tires it has. They don't talk about the suspension. They don't like, and a lot of times when you see a car that is like so prominent in a film, they're going to mention like, here's the details of this car. And it's so funny that like, this is such a, like an iconic film. It put the fucking Trans Am on the map, 700% increase in sales for the Pontiac Trans Am. And they talked about it like not at all. It was a fucking afterthought. It was just, we're going to buy a random car that's quick to block the police. And like this thing had T-tops and everything, which for those who don't know, T-tops is, instead of a convertible, it's like you have this roof is made of like a center pillar that's metal and connected to the rest of the car, and then these two like glass squares that you can remove. And so it's almost like a convertible.
It's the coolest possible way to guarantee that your car leaks in the rain.
I'm glad someone made the joke. Yes, it's a very cool way to have a leaky car. So like it had all this cool shit. It was, and funny enough, I actually had a 1981 Trans Am. It was my first car. Never drove it. Not surprising. The thing was rotting out and whatnot. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, these cars had some problems. But I did find it like kind of just weird that like they're driving this car and this, like even the director like kind of alluded to the car as like its own character, and yet we know so little about the character. Like it became culturally, you knew about it. It's like, oh, that's the Bandit car. Like everybody knows the car, but like, again, we don't even know what fucking engine it has. We're guessing it's either the 400 or the 403. We don't actually, I don't think we actually officially know.
I think it would have been the 400 or the 455.
No, I don't even think it was the 455 because I don't even think that was offered in 1977.
We do know.
I think it was.
Well, but this was a 76.
We're getting real nerdy here.
The car's a 76. Oh yeah, we are getting autistic about this.
We do know that it has the 400 because it says on the Ram air intake on the hood 6.6 liter.
Yes.
At one point, you
But
can
the
see
6.6 liter referred to both. It referred to both the 400 and the 403, although I think technically the 403 might have said T/A 6.6. I'm a little unclear about that, but both were technically a 6.6 liter. And yes, we're being very autistic about this now. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. What was I going to say? Oh, I forgot.
I don't know. I just found that fucking weird though. Like that they just really, the car is just like kind of an afterthought, even though this is the movie that is like the Trans Am movie. Like, I just found that
I think in a way the car kind of speaks for itself in the movie, whereas you don't have to have this scene of like a bunch of exposition about, oh, this is a 1977 Trans Am with a 403 cubic inch, yada, 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 giving you all the details of the car. It's just kind of like, look, this car can outrun the cops. It can do cool skids. It can jump a bridge. Like, just look at what it does. And it speaks for itself.
And it looks
great
good
doing it.
And it looks good doing it.
I also got the sense that this could all be accomplished in whatever car Burt Reynolds was driving. Like he's just, supernaturally good at driving that he can make anything fast.
Yeah.
Like he could be in a, Honda Civic or something and be doing the same thing.
It's
like,
the initial
Honda
D
Civic
idea.
from the
It's the initial D.
Yes, it's the initial D
idea
very
of car driving, wherein the car isn't so important. It could be anything. It could be a beater, a commuter car, and this driver is just so otherworldly that he makes it fast.
Yeah, despite all the garbage bias-ply tires they were on in this.
Yeah. Which probably lended to the skids.
It was in fact a 400.
Yeah.
Okay, it was a 400.
The 403 didn't come out until 77. So even though they were making this look like a 77, it was a 76. So the 403 would not have been an option.
Okay. All right, there you go. So it was the 400. It's about 185 horsepower, 320-ish foot-pounds of torque. I mean, the torque is good, but it's okay. I mean,
hey, it can do 110 kilometers an hour.
So would you guys recommend this movie, and like what would you what would you rate it?
Yes,
I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd.
Okay.
So
yeah, I was gonna say 8 out of 10. So I feel that.
I think that's about right. I do 4 to 4.5 out of 5. I'm gonna
go with 4.5 since it literally in a weird way changed my life.
I mean, this is part of the reason I bought a Trans Am, which I very much regretted and spent a lot of money. It was a very expensive mistake.
I think a lot of people made that mistake because of this movie.
Yeah. I feel like if you come at this movie from a working class perspective, this was literally the best that you could have ever hoped to get in the era.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like barring there absolutely was some issues with like sexism and like there was racism. It was just being poked fun of because it was coming from the police, but it was still poking fun at a very fucking real thing. Like that dude's a racist piece of shit cop, but the movie's against him.
Yeah, they're portraying a lot of the portrayals. Like there is a lot of racism in the movie, and it's being portrayed as this is bad, and not only bad, it's stupid. Like we're making fun of it because it's so fucking dumb. And for a movie from 1977, I mean, that was kind of good. I mean, this movie actually, I guess I hadn't ever really watched it from that leftist perspective, but like really taking notes, it really did have like kind of decent politics, and it was very anti-police. And like, not only was it just anti-police, it actually showed very specific real problems with the police. They are racist. They can lie with impunity. They can just do whatever they want to fucking random people and not be held accountable at all. They can ignore their jurisdictions. They can, find another cop doing a crime and then just be like, oh, don't arrest that guy, actually. So, like, they actually were very specific about the things that the police do that they don't like. And, I mean, for that, I think the film does deserve some credit. I mean...
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I'd recommend it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess before we go... Where can people find your podcast? Or you already told everyone where it is. I guess they can go onto the internet, presumably.
Yeah, if you just search Cars and Comrades on most any platform, we'll show up. I'm pretty sure it's "and" spelled out with no ampersand. And then we're on social media as the same. Not Reddit anymore. I kind of gave up on that. But Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Hex Bear.
And YouTube now.
Cars and Comrades, wherever podcasts are sold.
Yeah, we are on YouTube now as well.
Does it come with a free like Trans Am sticker? You got to have a
No, but we should absolutely
but,
make
you
a
know,
Trans Am sticker.
I'm sure.
I've seen you. Have you not seen the?
Yeah, I have.
Am?
I have seen that. We need to make
cool.
a sticker of that and sell it, but we're probably not going to do that.
That sticker already exists.
Yeah.
I believe you can get it from. It's a weird name. I'm not going to know it off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but you can find it. It's the Trans Am with the trans colors and everything. That sticker does exist. It is very cool, and yeah, it's dope. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, get that, but not a actual Trans Am. That would be a mistake.
Yeah, don't get a Trans Am.
Yeah, don't get a second gen. Probably don't get a third gen. Don't get a fourth gen either, because I have a fourth gen Camaro that I'm trying to sell right now. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm going to take this time to sell my car on your podcast. So that's cool to your listeners. If anybody is interested in a 30th anniversary white and orange Camaro SS, it's a 1997. It has no problems at all. I promise. It's very good. I have not struggled with it for many, many years. It has a Ford 9-inch rear end because the rear end blew up when I first bought it. So it's better. It's better now. But yeah, it's listed at Gateway Classic Cars. What the fuck's it called? I don't know. It's on consignment somewhere. Yeah. Gateway Classic Cars. Yeah. So,
and if you believe that it has no issues, please don't listen to any of our episodes in which we dispel that.
Yeah. And
we'll just put the link down below and no one will ever.
It doesn't currently have any issues. I fixed them. I'm hoping there's no more, but I also don't care if there's any more. So that's the deal I'm making with you. If you're interested, you can hit up our email at carsandcomrades.com.
No.
And,
carsandcomrades at Gmail.
Oh, carsandcomrades@gmail.com. And I will definitely try and sell you this car.
And also, if you have a cheap 76 Trans Am, hit me up. I was actually looking for one the other day.
I'll also say that I have a 2005 Saab 92X Aero for sale. It has 200,000 miles and no issues at all. But actually, hopefully, I have someone coming to look at it next week that wants to buy it. And yeah.
Sorry, Evan. We're all going to try and sell our cars now. We are all trying to sell cars.
I would just like to note that I have 8 vehicles and I don't want to sell any of them. They're mine.
Well, that's fucking perfect. But Zach, Connor,
I bet you're regretting having us on now.
I won't. You won't regret it.
You
won't regret it if you sell your car after this. So I'll have you. You have to come back then for that. But Brandon, Bryant, Connor, and Zach, it's been a pleasure having you on, and should definitely do it again.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this was a hoot.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, maybe one of these days we'll actually do Fast and Furious.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I would also do Convoy. Movie.
There's so many good movies.
Man, someone should make a podcast about how good movies are.
It could be a car movie podcast.
That's a good idea.
And like do it from like a leftist perspective. I think that would be very cool.
Oh, this is giving me a good idea for the. But I
think I'm going to do that. Connor, you want in on this with me?
But you've been listening to The Left of the Projector, and you can follow at leftoftheprojector.com. And we'll
keep an eye out for my future podcast, What's Left of the Projector.
We'll catch you next time.
Movies and Comrades.